Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering human creativity. I am Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Glyne Griffith II, who serves as Vice President of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Social Impact for the Dallas Symphony Orchestra. Glyne, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I am excited about being here.
Oh, I am so excited to talk to you, and obviously many exciting things going on in Dallas, and the Symphony is one of our wonderful creative partners, helped us to co-curate this show. And so first, I thought I would just start off by, if you could share what is the breadth of the work and the programming that falls under the purview of a VP of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Social Impact.
Yes, it is. It is a mouthful. But definitely excited to be here. Actually, with a newly created position that our fearless leader and CEO, Kim Noltemy, created last year. So I started last year, October. And essentially, as part of the strategic plan of the DSO, really this position is meant to make sure that we infuse equity, diversity, inclusion within every facet of the DSO. So it's a very large, big goal, but obviously there's a strong commitment there. So that includes working with our board, our staff, our musicians, even our volunteer groups, such as our chorus, which I'm biased because I'm a member of the chorus. So I always want to make sure that I plug the chorus, as well as our young professionals. But it's really making sure that commitment that the DSO has made is relevant, is seen, and is felt throughout every aspect of the organization. And that's part of my role here. And obviously not by myself, but partnering with other department heads and leads to do that.
Awesome. Absolutely awesome. And of course, the breadth that cuts across all of that, first thing that comes to my mind is, out of all of those areas, board, staff, musicians, et cetera, other areas of programming, is there a particular area that you find is either the most challenging or has the most complexity to it? Just wondering kind of if there's areas that you're like, this definitely needs, a fair amount of focus, either because of its complexity or challenges inherent just because by the nature of it.
Yeah, well, one of the things I'm finding out, especially coming into this particular field, having a corporate background, the staff piece of it, we can develop, whether it's workshops, training, various initiatives within the staff. It's easy. Yep, we can do it. We have the support. What I've learned is working with the musicians, that's a little bit different because of the union, and it's almost, I'm a basketball fan, so I equate it to like a CBA type of situation. So there's a whole set of different rules, how to engage. So learning that coming into this new field and navigating that, what we can do, what we can't do, how to approach it, that's something that's been eye-opening for me. And again, it's not impossible, but there are some different ways of navigating that. And I'm, for example, our musicians, very proud of them. They voted on and approved for us to launch for the first time a diversity fellowship. So that is huge for us. But again, that is something that's not predicated on myself or Kim mandating. That's the musicians coming together and saying this is something that's important that we want to do. So that's just an example. But I would say, yeah, definitely musicians, just because of the nature of how we engage with them. And like I said, the union and CBA and all those things that I'm learning about is probably a little different.
Definitely. So, and part of that also, you referenced kind of having had some of that history in the corporate world and then coming to the nonprofit and arts world, even though I'd say probably both your corporate and nonprofit were kind of both related to the arts, given that you were at Sirius XM.
Yes, yes.
And so curious, from, the perspective of those of us in the nonprofit arts world, are there things that you either know about or brought from the corporate world that you would look and say, the nonprofit arts world could either learn from, or these things help to inform the work between the two? Just kind of wondering about any of those distinctions or aspects that are helpful in the nonprofit arts world.
Sure, no, definitely. And it's actually one of the initiatives that I launched immediately joining. And how I look at it, I think I was speaking to someone the other day, when we talk about EDI or DEI, profit, nonprofit, for me, it all begins with people. It's all about organizational behavior, how people feel when they come to work. Do they feel empowered, that they can be their authentic selves? All of that, whether you're in a nonprofit or for-profit world, it all applies. So one of the things that coming from the corporate sector that we did was implementing employee resource groups. And it was a wonderful way to build that sense of inclusion and belonging, a sense of advocacy, giving folks that have similar passions. And it works great. It was one of the things that helped me to develop as a leader. And it was the first thing that I spoke with Kim about, can we do this? What I found out is that within nonprofit, specifically within the orchestral space, employee resource groups wasn't something that was popular. So it's something that we launched immediately. And what I had a passion for, again, coming into this space and recognizing the different facets of the ecosystem, staff, musicians, volunteer groups, is I said, what, our employee resource groups should be open to everyone. So we don't even call them employee resource groups. We call them our Dallas Symphony community groups, and they're open to staff, musicians, volunteer groups such as the chorus, young professionals. And it's been a great way to really establish a foundation for our equity, diversity, and inclusion commitment, and also galvanize the Dallas Symphony family together. And again, really kind of bring that sense of belonging and inclusion and collaboration.
Awesome. No, that's absolutely great. And I love that, especially, and hopefully that will now spur potentially other orchestras and arts organizations to think more about the resource groups, which of course have been so successful in the corporate world.
Yes.
So kind of switching gears a little bit to kind of just curious your sense, right? It's something that a lot of us talk about working in the DI space, but with everything kind of generally going on in the nation, and
Yes, yes.
especially in the political sphere, and all
Yeah.
of those things. Just any thoughts that you have in your role and really leading all of these efforts at the DSO, of thinking, where do you think we're headed? Are there things that you think we need to particularly be worried about or be focused on to try to head off? Just kind of curious what your really thoughts are looking forward, and any impact, positive or negative, on, from the nation as a whole and or the political landscape.
Yes, yes, no, great question. And definitely it seems, even speaking to some of my fellow practitioners that DEI, EDI, JEDI, whatever acronyms you want to use, is under attack. And one of the things I always try to go back to is that it really is all about people. People are the central focus, regardless of what organization you're in, and making sure that those people feel heard, they feel included. That's the nature of the work we do. We categorize it and put a name on it, but really it's about empathy. It's about respect. It's about valuing other people. And how I always try to make sure that I'm positioning any EDI efforts I do is to make sure it is focused on inclusion. Because what happens a lot is that you may have certain groups of people that feel that EDI and DEI is not for them, that it's meant to exclude them and it's meant to remove them. And I think that creates this sense of fear. And then we see all this backlash. For me, diversity isn't just African American or Hispanic or LGBTQ. It is everyone. That's the essence of the word diversity. So it is inclusive of the 45-year-old Caucasian male. We don't exclude him. that person is included. And I think sometimes with the DEI efforts, which rightfully so, because we have to look at equity and we have to look at where inequities exist and put things in place to address those inequities. And sometimes, again, that can be seen as we're excluding. So I always try to emphasize that any efforts, any initiatives, any strategies, it's meant to stimulate diversity, which is all of us. And I think that's a key point in whether it's nonprofit, arts, whatever industry, any kind of EDI efforts, really have to focus on that. And that's even for my time during SiriusXM. That was another big focus. We don't want anyone to feel excluded. You know, allies are instrumental to everything that we're going to be doing, even if we're focusing on a particular demographic, because we see gaps there. We need allies. And that goes all the way back to civil rights. You can go all the way back in history, you know, where allies are necessary and integral. So I think that's a thing to emphasize with the work that we're doing.
Absolutely. No, it's such an important, and love that philosophy and approach you have to it. Unfortunately, we are just about out of time, but I always like to ask of all my guests, you know, this work at times has got to be a bit tough and challenging. And just as an administrative leader, are there any mechanisms you use for your own leadership to draw on for guidance, for strength, for inspiration for yourself during the toughest times?
Sure. Well, I definitely family is important. You know, I have 11 and an 8-year-old and a wonderful wife. So I think about that balance of keeping, you know, centered and understanding priorities, I think is really important because any work you're in is going to be challenging. So burnout is something that's real, that can happen. Like you said, a political atmosphere and what's going on. Even just within DEI, I see a lot of my fellow practitioners. We see them leaving from these major corporations. So there is that level of angst that comes with it, but you know, I lean on my family and my faith to keep me, you know, keep me grounded and keep me positive, and also know that I'm here for a purpose. So that also kind of keeps me centered, you know, as far as really finding purpose in what I'm doing. And that's personally what I use.
Glyne Griffith II, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for everything you do, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.